straightforward so far. No mistakes at all yet. I would say, I mean, it's hard to call this move at O3 a mistake, but you usually want to play on the side that's more open. So for me as white, I would be thinking of playing at O17. Playing here just kind of leaves, there's not going to be, there's no territory for white to be gained here. Whereas this is a focal point for both sides. This is a point that both black would want and white would want. This is just a point that black would want. White's not going to be able to get that much over here. So for that reason, I think playing at O3 might be a little questionable.
Well, I think of O3 as breaking black's territory. But I guess black doesn't have a lot of potential there to begin with.
It's not that black doesn't have a lot of potential or anything like that. It's you have dual purpose moves versus singular purpose, right? So if you can have a move that does both, that's what you want to do, right? And so for that reason, I would probably be inclined to play at O17 or even something at like O5 or H5. This isn't what I would do now, but these are the moves that I'm thinking about because these are the ones that are going to affect territory for both sides, where white's never going to get much territory. It's just, the most that white's going to get is going to be 5 to 10 points, right? Whereas here, if you just play something very simple, kind of the exact same variation that we had here, white's made the same amount of territory, but also is building up a nice framework here. So this is how I would think about the game.
Okay, makes sense.
This move is unfortunately just kind of awkwardly placed because, again, there's very little territory to be had here. It's still pretty easily invadable, and so it kind of goes back to why I wouldn't play O3 of this is never going to be much territory for white. If I were white here, I would immediately play at Q3 or just Tanuki and play elsewhere. I think that L4 is just odd placement because you're just not going to make too much territory. And even a follow-up move here is quite small as well. This is all fine, no issues. I think we typically don't see an extension at R14 anymore. Well, let me rephrase. If you see R15, black's almost always going to double high. And the reason for that is if this is the old variation before AIs, and sorry, this is the old variation before AI, where black would get a really thick outside influence and white would get territory in the corner. And this would generally be considered good for black. The influence here is generally considered to be worth more than the 10 points in the corner for white. However, after AI, we learned that extending at S13 one more time and playing this peep here ended up creating a kind of inefficient shape for black. It made it hard for black to really use these stones too effectively in order to get all this territory. This stone here and this stone here are going to be hard to attack. And the white group is perfectly alive in the corner. So that's why you wouldn't normally just see an extension at R14. You would almost always see it followed up by S14.
Yeah, that's the whole AlphaGo thing that changed.
Yeah. And alternatively, if you don't want to play this variation, if you don't want to play the double Hane, what is more common nowadays is for black to extend Q15. White plays here, or white will play here, one of the two. They both create roughly the same result, not that big a difference. And then black would block, and something like this would happen. And black would get Sente, and black play a large move elsewhere on the board, maybe something like this. And this would be kind of the standard way of playing nowadays, or playing the double Hane. But extending after playing R15 is probably going to be a mistake. It's definitely good to get this extra extension here, even though it seems a little counterintuitive. It is Sente, right? So black has to answer. So even though this wall seems thick, because of this peep here, it's going to be hard for black to really make good use of this wall. And getting this extra move here is actually going to, at S13, for white, is actually going to affect a little bit of the life of the group. So if white were to just play elsewhere, so just some move here, white, any move on the outside over here is going to be Sente, and any move on the inside here is going to be Sente. So white has to answer here. Otherwise, black's going to play here, play here, play here, and this is going to be a troublesome result for white. and this is dead shape. However, if white makes the exchange first, black extends here, and white plays away. When black does the same thing, now white can tanuki. And the reason that white can tanuki is that if black plays here, white plays here, black plays here, now white can play here. So making that extension at S13 is actually really important to the life of this group. And it's well worth giving black a little bit of extra influence on the outside. Here. This is okay. No, this is fine. Yeah, I might be inclined to kick here. This shape is a little bit, I don't want to say inefficient for black, but it's a little bit over concentrated, and this will protect the corner. And now if black were to play here, white could actually pincer this stone and start some sort of fight. And it would be a little hard for black to try to live here and make the stone live here.
So also F18 is center, so why not take the exchange, right?
Well, it's not center because you connect back.
Oh,
right?
I see, yeah.
So you could play here and then block and then play elsewhere. That's fine, and that has some benefits on the 3/3 invasion to begin with, right? So if you were to, I don't know where you play now. Maybe play here, right? If black were to invade here, there would be some relevance here where white would be able to capture this corner territory. So even just making the exchange is already good. If you want to connect the exchange, you can do that as well.
Okay.
Because this 3/3 point is invadable, this move at C11 is a little questionable. I'm not sure. I think the problem with a move like this, with pushing through right now, is there's still this cutting point here for white. So it's going to be a little bit tough for black, for white to really get a good attack on these 3 stones here. So for that reason, I might be more inclined to just connect here. Black might play here. Something like this might occur. And this might be a little bit cleaner. Unfortunately, I think that this could be a little bit risky depending on how black plays. Depending on how white plays. If black plays like this, it's a little bit better shape for black than the previous variation. It's an extra point or two. Not a huge difference, but it's an exchange that you don't necessarily need to make. So I think I would just connect here. And then when white plays here, you can push through. Something like this would be okay. So this sequence was very confusing to me. I saw it before. There's no way that white's going to be able to kill this group when black plays here, right? This is completely living shape here. It's at least 1 eye here, if not 2 eyes in the corner. White needs to get C18 and B19. So this group is perfectly alive. So when white plays here, instead of capturing at B15, white made a big mistake. Because now white gets to, black will live, but lives in Gote. Now white gets a really strong position on the outside over here and gets to kind of attack these stones over here that are a little bit weaker. So I think that white's move at D18 was probably pretty questionable. I think black's move at C18 was also questionable for that same reason. I think that
it looks
outside is still quite large, and black has to come in, loses Sente, and white gets the initiative. So this was definitely a loss for black.
So if white played B15 instead of D18, it still looks alive, or is it ko for the
It's perfectly alive because
alive, right?
This black gets this moving for free, but this is alive in Gote.
Okay, and it's very nicely sealed on the
yeah. Whereas if you were to play here, this is now alive in a much better position, in a much better way, right? Like,
yeah, definitely.
And this is also questionable. Why not just take the stone at P15? There's no fear here. Just capture the stone. You're golden. Black's still going to owe a move here in order to actually live here. So definitely a loss here for black, for white too. And black actually had the opportunity to Tanuki here, although this is still Sente because white's going to need to answer here anyway. But certainly you can give up this one stone if you want to as well. So it doesn't really matter too much though. I'm not sure why white Tanuki here. Playing here is a huge amount of territory. It's 5 stones, so 10 points plus 2 for. And actually, it's probably about a 15-point move, but it's also making this group much stronger. So it's probably closer to a 20 some odd point move. Not to say that Q3 is small, but I think what maybe black should have done here is play here, have white play here, and then push through here, because now white doesn't have too great attacks on these stones. White has to be careful of how heavily it attacks these stones, because then black will be able to attack back. So probably the best result for white here would just be to play here and then black plays here, in which case black has made a lot of profit in the upper left corner. So maybe black makes the exchange at R3 first and then plays here. Would be another way to play. Although of course if black just played here, I think this would still be big enough.
Yeah, that upper left corner just looks so big.
Yeah, not that this group is particularly weak, but it's at least 15 points just by capturing the group. It's also making these stones a little bit weaker. And it will, these points over here were undecided who's going to get what, because, white always had this just G18 move. So it's very odd that white would play away now. Here, though, I think black had an opportunity to come back and play here. White, there's no follow-up here for white that's going to be particularly severe. Yeah, again, these moves here are just not large enough, and there's not a severe enough attack on this group in order to really merit playing away from here. So I would definitely have to say all of these moves right now are mistakes. I don't know if white really is going to be able to counter attack too well. I think this black stone is going to be able to connect back. So for that reason, I might just try to connect here. I don't think that the attack here is going to be all that severe. Because white's already alive here, and can play something like this. Well, sorry, let me go back a little bit. Maybe white just plays here to stop that connection, and now this move, it's not a loss for black yet, but it's possible that later on white can play moves like this and more severely attack the stone. So black's going to owe a move here if it actually wants to have this group live. However, white's not going to die here because you can either capture this stone at R4 or you can live locally by playing M2. So this group for white is perfectly alive. And so for that reason, I think L2 is probably a mistake. Again, just focusing more on this upper left group. Yeah, I think white's counter attack's not going to go too well for white. This was very odd to me. This is a pretty common sacrifice play. White will play here. Capture. If white connects, then it's going to be a pretty complicated fight, I think, but I think it's one that I guess maybe this isn't a good fight for black. Maybe black should play here first. If white plays here, then black can play here. If white plays here, then black can still connect. The only thing that white would have to fear is playing here, but I think that this fight is too aggressive for these two white stones here. And this group is not alive. It's not perfectly alive yet. So I think this would be an advantageous fight for black. So maybe black should just make this move here and not worry about trying to be fancy by playing it J2. There are some weaknesses. Of course, black could do it in this order. However, this is a much better shape for white than the variation we were just looking at. If it was played like this, I would be much happier as white in this position than the one we just went over. So I think a couple of mistakes on both sides here. I think the first mistake is L2. I don't think this was a particularly optimal move. I think that if black plays at N4, this black L2 stone is still problematic. And we're not even focusing on the upper left part of the board. This move is just, I think, a little too aggressive. And I don't think it's actually going to be able to capture this L2 stone. Although this move is definitely questionable. I think that if you're going to do anything, you'd have to play here. Or you'd play here And this is already a better shape for black because you're now able to get a little bit of outside influence. So this is already a little bit better shape for black than just playing here. We're now, where now white gets to get this move in for free, making this perfectly alive, and taking away all the weaknesses that exist here. So this now actually became quite a lot of territory for white. And the other part of that is white can play here, and now this black group is not allowed. So white's going to get even further attack. So I think that this jump at h5 is definitely a little dubious. White invades here. I think I would definitely make this g2 extension for white. I think that's sentai, so there's no reason not to make it. Whether you play at c3 right now, b3 right now, maybe you can decide yes or no. But d2 is a free exchange for white, and there's no reason that white wouldn't play here. I think because these stones are about to be captured, this move is an overplay. This black here is a little too strong to really have much to happen. And because white didn't make this exchange at s13, black does have the option of playing here later on, which will be sentai on the group. And so now this group is much stronger and it gets a better attack on m17 stone. So I think that black in the upper on the upper part of the board is really doing much better. Obviously, white took some profit over here, but I still think that if this was the game, I would prefer black.